Aston Martin just made either the smartest move or the most expensive mistake in Formula One history. In 2025, they finished 7th. No wins, no podiums. And their bosses were actually relieved because every embarrassing result was deliberate. They were hiding something involving an industry legend, a secretive engine, and a multi-million-pound facility built from scratch. By the end of this, you'll understand why 2026 is a do-or-die affair for them. Let's start with the numbers, because they are brutal. In 2025, Aston Martin finished 7th in the Constructors' Championship, 89 points. For perspective, McLaren, the Constructors' Champions, had a whopping 833 points. Aston Martin didn't even manage a single Grand Prix win or a podium finish. Fernando Alonso's 5th place in Hungary was somehow their proudest moment all year. You know it's a horrendous season when a 5-time world champion celebrates 5th place like it's a trophy. But this story gets even stranger. It turns out that Aston Martin knew. Before the season even started, they knew exactly how bad it would get, and they chose it anyway. Executive Technical Director Bob Bell admitted publicly that 2026 was already the priority before Albert Park Circuit in Melbourne welcomed the cars in March 2025. That's not a mid-season pivot, it's a premeditated decision made in a boardroom while everyone else was still celebrating the previous season. And there's one detail that shows how true this was. Their brand new wind tunnel, which cost £200 million to build, never once tried to fix the 2025 car. It spent its first operational months developing 2026. Imagine a state-of-the-art facility sitting right there, but the team deliberately pointed it away from their struggling machine. In Saudi Arabia, Aston Martin became the only team on the entire grid that could not beat their own lap times from the previous year. Every other team improved, but Aston Martin went backwards, on purpose. When the team's chief strategy officer, Andy Cowell, was asked about it, his response was as blunt as they come. He said they were using 2025 as a learning platform for the wind tunnel. Gathering data was the main priority, not points. That's either visionary thinking or the most expensive science experiment in motorsports history. Possibly both. But apparently, one massive gamble wasn't enough, because Aston Martin looked at everything they had already risked and decided, let's go bigger. September 10th, 2024, Aston Martin dropped a shocker. Adrian Newey would join the team after departing Red Bull, assuming the role of managing technical partner. This was the man responsible for 14 drivers' championships and 12 constructors' titles across 3 different teams. The most decorated designer in the history of the sport. And somehow, Lawrence Stroll got him. And the numbers start to get uncomfortable. Newey's contract was valid for 5 years, £30 million per year. That's £150 million total. That places Newey's earnings above 18 of the 20 drivers currently on the grid. Only Verstappen and Hamilton earn more. When an engineer is out-earning almost every driver in Formula One, that tells you everything you need to know about how seriously Aston Martin are taking this. But the salary wasn't even the most surprising part. Newey also received a 2.5% equity stake in the team, making him a partner, not an employee. He admitted himself that nothing like this has ever been offered to him before in his entire career. And this man has worked at Williams, McLaren, and Red Bull. So that statement speaks volumes. And his Red Bull exit wasn't dramatic either. It was quiet. Dietrich Mateschit's death shifted the culture internally. That Horner investigation concerning allegations by a female employee also left him privately unimpressed. Power struggles added insult to injury by making the environment uncomfortable. Newey simply said he wouldn't have been true to himself if he stayed. And honestly, that's the most human thing any Formula One engineer has ever said publicly. Around him, Aston Martin assembled quietly and ruthlessly. Andy Cowell now runs technical operations. That was the architect behind Mercedes' 12 title engine dominance. There's also Enrico Cardile, who arrived from Ferrari as chief technical officer. Cardile is so good, Ferrari fought to keep him around. Let's shift our focus to the engine now, because the engine sitting in their 2026 car isn't just any power unit. It comes from a manufacturer that has won over half of all Formula One races since returning to the sport. And the timing of that partnership was anything but accidental. To understand where it all began, we need to go back to May 2023, the day when Aston Martin made a phone call that changed everything, and Honda picked up. But this wasn't a standard engine supply deal. It was a works partnership, and that word, works, carries more weight in Formula One than most people realize. Here's the difference. A customer deal means you get the engine, the manual, and go your way. On the other hand, a works partnership means Honda's engineers sit inside your factory. They share data openly and solve problems together. It becomes less like a business arrangement and more like a marriage. A very expensive, very technical marriage. And that's not all. Honda did not just sign a contract. They built a dedicated operation facility in Milton Keynes, constructed specifically and exclusively for this partnership. When a manufacturer spends money on bricks and mortar just for your team, that's beyond commitment. It's obsession. And their track record is also difficult to argue with. Since returning to Formula One in 2019 alongside Red Bull, Honda-powered cars have won over half of all races on the calendar. Multiple world championships followed. These are not people who show up to finish second. Then, on January 20th, 2026, both organizations held a joint engine reveal in Tokyo, and Formula One's own CEO, Stefano Domenicali, flew to Japan for that event. That alone tells you how significant this partnership is considered at the very top, and that engine could not have come at a better time. Christian Horner called the 2026 regulations the biggest reset in roughly 60 years of Formula One. It technically means that teams are essentially starting from a blank page, and that matters enormously for Aston Martin's plan. Stable regulations are a fortress for frontrunners such as Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. They spend years perfecting their concepts, compounding tiny advantages, until catching them becomes nearly impossible. But the moment everything changes simultaneously, that fortress crumbles overnight. Every team grabs a blank sheet of paper, and suddenly the constructor that finished 7th last season has exactly the same starting point as the constructor that won the championship. That is the window that Aston Martin saw, and that's why they sacrificed the 2025 season. That's why they didn't mind making that £150 million signing and spending on the new factory. Not to forget the exclusive Honda deal. All that happened in this exact sequence. It was not chaos. It was architecture. But windows can also close, and some of the people building this dream have already said things publicly that no honest viewer should ignore. At one point in November 2025, Newey admitted that he has absolutely no idea how competitive they will be in 2026. The team is still finding its feet, still settling. £30 million a year can buy his genius, but it cannot buy certainty. And that's his own words. Then Honda's president also admitted they're struggling, that the new battery is proving genuinely difficult. The extra weight in the power unit is also a real concern. Now, there's also another observation that should worry every Aston Martin fan. Between 2025 and 2017, McLaren and Honda tried something similar, but the results were catastrophic. History doesn't always repeat, but at times, it rhymes uncomfortably. Aston Martin has spent £600 million since 2020. Sacrificed a whole season, and made the most expensive technical hire in Formula One history. And on top of that, invested in a purpose-built factory and an exclusive Honda partnership. But ingredients don't win races. Execution does. Soon, we'll find out whether Lawrence Stroll is the most visionary team owner in modern Formula One or the most expensive cautionary tale it has ever produced. Subscribe to the channel for more interesting F1 content.